Broadcasting live from Boseiju, still kicking it on the plain of Kamigawa. This is Tap Tap Concede. Welcome everybody to Tap Tap Concede. My name is Graham. Joining me as ever is Cameron and Nelson.
Hi, I'm also here.
And today we're going to be talking about a whole bunch of stuff. We've been after sort of spending a week or two being like, what are we gonna talk about this week on Tap Tap Concede? This week we've got there's a banned and restricted announcement that we're going to touch on quickly, and then as of yesterday, at time of recording, we're recording this on Friday, January 28th.
8th.
I know what dates are. They started spoiler season in earnest yesterday and dropped a whole ton of stuff on us, so we can talk about all kinds of different things. Dealing with Kamigawa Neon Dynasty. Before we do that, a reminder, of course, that Tap Tap Concede is brought to you by Card Kingdom. Please check out cardkingdom.com/LRR. You can get your pre-orders in for Kamigawa Neon Dynasty. Putting the little /LRR on there lets them know that we sent you, and we do that because we think they're great. They have excellent customer service, tremendously fast shipping, and they're just a good bunch of folks. And if you tell them Loading Ready Run sent me, button please, they'll give you a little 1-inch button, which right now says, "You're brainstoning wrong." Because now we know what it actually says. And of course, this show and everything we do is brought to you by you and your kind support of our Patreon at patreon.com/loadingreadyrun. So thank you so much for that. All right. Last week, we touched briefly on the Pauper banned and restricted announcement, which was separated from the other stuff because of the Pauper format panel. But there's a normal banned and restricted announcement that happened on January 25th, impacting Standard, Legacy, and Historic, and to the note of some people, not impacting Modern in any way. For what it's worth, Wizards has said, we're fine. Modern's fine. And most people, I think, are actually like, you're probably right. But they were surprised that nothing happened in Modern.
From my timeline, I haven't been playing a ton of Modern, but my impression was Modern seemed to be in a pretty bad place for many weeks. But then the 2 weeks before this banned and restricted announcement, everything seemed to settle out kind of just in time. There's still some best decks, but the format is diverse.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So let's take a look at Standard. Ban. Holy moly. Alrund's Epiphany. Banned in Standard. They've finally decided, you know what? Taking extra turn? It's unreasonable. Even in 2022. So, yeah, Alrund's Epiphany is banned. Divide by Zero is banned. As a reminder, Divide by Zero is 2 and a blue for an instant. Return target spell or permanent with mana value 1 or greater to its owner's hand and learn. So, you can sort of remand, like you can put a hand, you can like not counter a spell, but you can put the spell back in their hand, so kind of counter it. Or you can bounce something that's not a token, because it has to be mana value 1 or greater, and then also you learn. What was Divide by Zero doing that was so problematic?
Just everything. Divide by Zero was just the glue that stuck the Alrund's Epiphany decks together. It was in the Blue-Red Dragons deck. When there were Blue-Black control decks happening, it was in those. Like, basically, it let you play the format.
Okay.
Yeah, because it just does so much, right? It can't bounce a token, but it can bounce everything else, including a spell. Just wildly powerful.
All right.
Plus, like the learn mechanic, it's like learn is like this box you want to tick in your constructed decks, which I'm actually really happy to see, because I thought maybe it was only going to be in limited that we cared about it, but nope. You want to have access to environmental sciences in Standard too, which is great, I think. But yeah, this card was just, I talked about considering different Dragons decks a few weeks ago for Alchemy, a cousin of Standard, and one of them was just like Boros Dragons, but also with Divide by Zero. So like, any deck was kind of tempted to reach out for this card. It's just very good.
Very splashable.
Yeah.
For like a hard counter. Not hard counter, but like,
Yeah, it's a hard counter-ish. Yeah, they can't beat it with mana. It's like a mana leak that says pay the same amount of mana. You compare it to Remand, and it's a good comparison. It costs 1 more mana, but like you eat up all the mana they spent for that card. So if they're casting like an Alrund's Epiphany, which I don't think says can't be countered, can it?
Nope.
I don't want to get too much egg on my face this early in the morning. Anyways, yeah, then they have to spend another 7 mana to cast that.
And then the third and final standard ban was Faceless Haven, which is the land from Kaldheim. It's a snow land, taps for colorless, and for snow, 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 you can make it into a 4/3 creature with vigilance and all creature types until end of turn. Still a land. And what was this doing that was so bad?
Just winning games next to aggro decks. You could play mono green or mono white. Mono other colors too, but those are the two most prevalent. And yeah, this is just these three bans really. Like the first one's targeted and makes a lot of sense, not too surprising. Mm-hmm. But the next two are sort of just like, we're going to shake up standard. Like we're just going to remove an important piece of like a lot of decks.
Yeah, like I suppose both of these cards can just, I mean, Splashable's a weird thing to say with snow mana, right? But
you just run snow basics instead of non-snow basics, I suppose.
Yeah, this card didn't show up too much in two color decks, but you're right. You could pretty much put it in anything.
I was
actually before we move.
Sorry, just as a interesting note, all three of those cards have alchemy nerfed versions of them too.
Yeah, I was going to mention that actually. That on the back of this, so this was on the 25th, and then 2 days later, they announced a whole bunch of more alchemy rebalance stuff, including in the case of. So we've already had Elrond's Epiphany, we've already had Faceless Haven, but then they also tweaked Divide by Zero, which is in Alchemy now 2 and a blue, so same mana cost, instant, return target spell or permanent with mana value 1 or greater to its owner's hand. If the mana value is 4 or less, then you learn. So you only learn if it's in that little window where the spell or permanent is small.
Yeah, force them to spend another 7 mana, no extra card for you.
Yeah, yeah. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Anything else for sort of your thoughts for standard before we move out of?
Yeah, I mentioned it. It's like these are pretty important sweeping changes to this format, and I don't know if anyone cares. I'm not sure who's playing standard right now. I haven't played it since Alchemy came out, and I haven't really had it like come across my timeline that there have been important standard events happening. Where you live, you can play in paper, and your FNM is standard. This matters to you. So congrats, you are winning, even though you now own a bunch of pieces of cardboard called Faceless Haven or Elrond's Epiphany that used to be worth money.
In Legacy, this is something that I know. I don't know anything about Legacy, but I know that people have been waiting for this or something like this. Ragavan, Nimble Pilferer, is banned in Legacy. So this was from Modern Horizons 2. Ragavan is a single red mana for a 2/1 legendary creature, Monkey Pirate, which you'd just love to see. Whenever Ragavan deals combat damage to a player, create a treasure token and exile the top card of that player's library. Until end of turn, you may cast that card. And he's got Dash from Khan's block for 1 and a red. And Dash is you can cast it for its dash cost. You put it into play, it gets haste, but then at the end of turn, it goes back to your hand.
And I think that's why it took this long to get banned, actually. No one had read all the way to the bottom of Ragavan. To be fair, like it's already, look at the bottom right and the top right, and you're already sold. And then you get this huge paragraph-long bonus ability on combat damage. And then it turns out it has one more really good ability. And people figured that out last month in Legacy.
So was it just that it was a 2/1 for 1, and then you could protect it with counter magic?
That's the main thing, yeah.
Wow.
It started just sort of forcing its way, I think, into pretty much every deck that could comfortably play Force of Will. Like I saw this guy, next to Artifacts decks. I saw it like the most popular thing is I think is it Delver or Teamer Delver, where you have like some 1-drops that are going to win you the game eventually, and then a bunch of card drawing and permission. And specific interaction and those kinds of decks. You've seen Blue-Red Delver decks before, I'm sure. But
so like the rules box,
like Daze and Force box, yeah.
So the rules box, like while relevant, was not as relevant as just the fact that it's a red Savannah Alliance.
No. It's important that it draws you cards every turn and makes mana too.
Okay.
Like the rules. I'm just saying, like, for me, I would enjoy it as a card if it was just red Savannah Alliance. Every red Savannah Alliance they print means I can cut one more 3-drop out of mono red Highlander, right?
But yeah, like
Eventually, the whole deck will just cost 1 and alternate casting costs.
Yeah, like flopping Ragavan turn 1 and then keeping up Force of Will, or being able to Vapor Snag the next turn.
Yeah. The fact that it makes a treasure token is so nuts for Legacy.
Yeah, like why does it also give you cash?
It's a pirate.
Right? Like,
Right? Yeah.
steals a card and comes back with a 20. Like, Ragavan, I think you're going too far. Right? Like, not only are you the best Ophidian ever printed. Come on. In red.
Yeah, it is a bit of a slap in the face, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then transitioning onto Arena, also in Historic, they had previously suspended Memory Lapse, which of course is 1 and a blue instant, counter a spell. If that spell is countered, put it on top of its owner's library instead of into their graveyard. And they were like, yes, we were right to have done that. And so now it is banned in Historic. Yeah. Conversely, 3 Fairy is no longer 3 Fairy and is no longer banned. So they'd previously banned Teferi Time Raveler, 1 white blue for the 4 loyalty walker. Each opponent can cast spells only anytime they could cast a sorcery. And I mentioned those parts in particular because that's what was changed, because he is now Quad Fairy and is unbanned as now 2 white blue, 5 loyalty, and your opponents can't cast spells during your turn, and all other text being equal.
That's neat.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess it still does the same thing, only worse.
Yeah.
Well,
Like,
yeah, it stops. They do it in the explanation, but this wording on the ability means that your opponents can still cast like their Finale of Revelation or whatever, the like spells that cause you to cast other spells, like Cascade, can work now again in Historic with Teferi still around.
Right, because that's what Teferi stopped. It was
Yeah.
yeah,
Right.
it had, like, I think this is probably more true to the intended design
Yeah.
probably
than just
yeah.
finding out that, like, your deck doesn't work.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it would have been cool if they could have templated it so that, like, you know, while you have, I don't know, like during their combat, they can't cast spells too or something, because he's supposed to be the master of having, you know, you have the best timing for anything, but they needed a way to stop it from shutting down the opponent's spells like that.
Yeah. So that's the case in Historic, and then also in Alchemy, they've made some other changes to some cards that we've seen previously. So the Fearsome Whelp that we talked about, which was the
Red.
yeah, Nelson's sad 1 and a red for a 1/1 dragon with flying and haste. And it's each dragon card in your hand perpetually gains the spell cost 1 less to cast. That now triggers on your upkeep instead of your end step. So they have a turn cycle to deal with it. Hullbreaker Horror can now be countered. Again,
Only
this
in
is
Alchemy,
all,
I guess.
This is
Yeah.
all on Alchemy only, what we're talking about now. Inquisitor Captain is quite different now. Well, it's not quite different, but it's like
Quite nerfed.
yeah. So Inquisitor Captain is 3 and a white for a 3/3 with Vigilance. When it enters the battlefield, and there are 20 more creature cards with mana value 3 or less among cards in your graveyard, hand, or library, seek 2 creatures with mana value 3 or less, put one of them onto the battlefield and shuffle the other one into your library. Inquisitor Captain now reads, if you cast it, do all that. So you can't reanimate Inquisitor Captain or do like things with clone effects or stuff like that. So it's a little more reasonable there, I suppose. Lear, you can only flashback stuff during your turn. Cameron, bad news. They removed the life gain from sacrificing blood tokens on Sanguine Brushstroke.
Oh, come on.
I mean, that's like the first thing you wanted them to remove if they're going to remove something at least.
Yeah.
My Signet doesn't add mana unless it survives a turn now.
The opponent still loses life, which is interesting.
Okay.
But you no
as long
longer
as it's
also
still
gain
opposing-
life.
As long as it's still hurting someone.
Yeah,
It
exactly.
still wins the game. It just doesn't keep you alive.
And then Town Razor Tyrant was nerfed in one way, which is
Take me, not my son.
it can now only hit non-basic land. But it was buffed in another way, which is that they've correctly capitalized the intercaps. I saw Cube April asking about this, like because it used to say capital T OWN hyphen small r AZER, and now it's correctly templated.
Somebody got emailed another copy of the style guide.
And then they also, so those were like the adjustments, but then they also made a whole bunch of buffs. I like that they call them buffs and adjustments. They made a whole bunch of buffs to cards involving venturing into the dungeon. I'm not going to go through them piece by piece because there's a lot, but like Acererak, Cloister Gargoyle, Dungeon Descent, Eliwick Tumblestrum, Fate's Reversal, Find the Path, Precipitous
Dungeon
Drop,
Descent buff is huge, too.
and Triumphant Adventure. Dungeon Descent is massive, so it's a it's a land. It no longer enters tapped. It still taps for colorless, and now the tap it and tap an untapped legendary creature you control to venture into the dungeon as a sorcery now only costs 1 mana instead of 4. They really want people to go adventuring in alchemy, which is interesting.
Well, I mean, wasn't very good before.
Yeah,
No, it was
Dungeon
bad.
Descent was as printed is so nerfed. I wish I could play this.
Good card.
I wish I could play this version in Canadian Highlander.
Yeah.
Because this card's actually okay. Like I can remember talking about this when the card was first previewed or after we had drafted it a few times. I'm like, why does it have to come in tapped if you also have to pay 4 and tap another creature, right? So that's good news.
Yeah, and a small note that wasn't mentioned in these notes, but Rahilda, I think it is one of the digital only cards. The werewolf, the backside of Rahilda, the name, I guess it's just it's Rahilda with a different epitaph or whatever.
Rahilda werewolf as opposed to Rahilda human. Yeah.
Yeah. Now you can see here if you're watching the video, does not have the little color indicator dot, which mechanically on Arena meant that this side, even though it appeared red, that this side of Rahilda was colorless. So you couldn't kill Rahilda with Vanishing Verse, which only exiles a monocolored permanent.
And both these cards are fairly played.
Yeah, and so people were like, "Why can't I kill Rahilda?" And so Rahilda now has a color indicator dot or pip or whatever it's called, and so is appropriately a mono red card.
Time to sleeve up Hydroblast.
So, all kinds of changes to alchemy. If that's your jam, let us know how that goes, Nelson. I think you were the one amongst the three of us that plays alchemy.
I will let you know how it's going currently. I spent my free time playing Legends of Runeterra because it's like I didn't think it was going to hit me this hard, but I got in this format and I'm glad that they're updating things. The idea of balancing like the top-down view of my life or whatever, I'm like my gaming life. I'm just like, yay, good. They're like changing things and updating and doing patches, and that's great. And then personally, the way I feel from my perspective, my first-person view is just like my wild cards, like in my deck. Like I liked this deck. I enjoyed playing it. It's worse. It was doing well, and now it's going to be doing bad. And they didn't give me anything in return. Like I just want my wild cards back from my dragons that have been nerfed.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then I would feel good and want to build more decks. But right now I feel ripped off.
Yeah. No, like I want to approach alchemy as like the labs version of Magic, right? And
maybe make alchemy all free to play, right? And or not free to play, all phantom, but you have to pay into an event to get into it. I don't know. Sorry, Cameron.
There has to be some.
I'm foaming at the mouth over here.
If you're going to have like a rapidly adjusted format that's responsive and rebalances a lot, which I think is good. That's very good. But this is so expensive.
Yeah. Like in StarCraft 2, if my tanks don't shoot as far as they did last week, I don't have to buy the game a second time.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely legitimate. Yeah. I don't blame people for getting burned out on the format like this.
Yeah.
Even though I think it's actually a very interesting opportunity for Magic. I think it's this is way too expensive.
Yeah. Also, I think if they gave me some free wildcards, I would then be closer to giving them more money.
Yes.
Like, in case anyone disagrees with me about that, get in the comments. I'm going to chat.
Like that feels like such an obvious thing. Like it feels like the kind of like gaming psychology that we know
That's from 20 years ago.
That's been solved, right?
Yeah.
Right. Which is like you give a little bit for free and then they will spend, right? But I don't know.
Yeah. No confidence in the format.
Yeah.
Right.
What I am confident in is that I cannot wait to get my hands on Kamigawa Neon Dynasty.
Yeah, let's get into that.
Especially after seeing a bunch of the cards. Now I know that we sometimes in advance of the pre-release, which is coming up on February 5th at 11 a.m. Pacific. Tune in for that. First time anyone outside of Wizards of the Coast gets to play with the cards. It's going to be a lot of fun. In prep for that, we get some amount of information ahead of time. I personally, at least, had not seen anything because I didn't need to for any of the stuff that we're doing, so I hadn't looked. And so this was all brand new information to me, including, I'm going to start with the big splash that they also started with on the announcement stream. Tamiyo completed Sage. So Tamiyo has been or volunteered to be or we're not entirely sure because I haven't read the
I need to
lore.
read this story. Suddenly I'm compelled to read Magic Story.
Yeah. Tamiyo has been Phyrexified. So that's exciting or scary. Not entirely sure. But here's the card. Tamiyo completed Sage is 2 blue, green, and then a hybrid Simic Phyrexian mana. Or a completed mana, they say.
Didn't know we were going to get new mana symbols with this set, did you, kids?
Yeah. So there's a lot going on in this set. We've got shrines that are creatures. We've got sagas that are creatures. We've got creatures that are equipment. It's all over the place. Completed mana, or formerly known, I guess, as Phyrexian mana. So this can be paid with either blue or green, or 2 life. If life was paid, this planeswalker enters with 2 fewer loyalty counters. So that's interesting.
And someone pointed out on Twitter that like this templating means that we're probably only going to see these symbols on planeswalkers.
I guess
if it's in the reminder text like that, I think
it could be on creatures, and then they enter with like fewer counters if they're on creatures with +1/+1 counters.
Maybe.
I don't know.
Maybe
we will have to see and find out.
Looking forward to the FAQ.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Tamiyo by default has 5 loyalty. So 5 mana for 5 loyalty, or 4 mana and 2 life for 3 loyalty. Everyone on board so far? Okay. +1, tap up to 1 artifact or creature. It doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. Great. -X, exile target non-land permanent with mana value X from your graveyard. Create a token that's a copy of that card.
That's exciting.
What I like about that is that previous Tamiyos have like the most recent one anyway, has like pulled a thing back from your graveyard. And this Tamiyo is like, that, gone. But we can make another one. It's a subtle thing that I don't know. I kind of like that.
It's kind of a reference to her current form.
Yeah,
right?
from the Phyrexian Tamiyo.
Like old Tamiyo gone, but new, better Tamiyo here to stay.
And then -7, create Tamiyo's Notebook, a legendary colorless artifact with spells you cast cost 2 less to cast, and tap, draw a card. Dang.
Yeah. So if the Phyrexians can make a planeswalker be Phyrexian now, are we just like at the beginning of like a huge arc where they're going to take over the entire multiverse?
I mean, we saw it was
we're not the beginning. Maybe it's not the beginning.
It was a year ago, right? But Vorinclex was on Kaldheim.
That's right. Just so he could fight Kaya or something.
Yeah, and now, I mean, also let's take a look because Jin-Gitaxias is on Kamigawa, because we've also seen Gataxius, Progress Tyrant, 5 blue for a 5/5 legendary creature, Phyrexian Praetor. Whenever you get, interestingly, by the way, there's probably because there's not enough room on the type line, that Tamiyo is not a legendary Phyrexian planeswalker. I don't know if that's a mechanical thing or literally just that there's not enough room on the type line, because legendary planeswalker and Phyrexian are all very long words. But Gataxius says, whenever you cast an artifact, instant, or sorcery spell, copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. This ability triggers only once each turn. A copy of a permanent spell becomes a token. Whenever you cast, whenever an opponent casts an artifact, instant, or sorcery spell, counter that spell. This ability triggers only once each turn.
I really, really like this as a kind of homogenization with Elish Norn Grand Cenobite.
Yep.
Right. It's like
this is the
my
blue.
stuff's all better and your stuff is
Same
worse.
casting cost, right?
Yeah.
5 color.
Yeah.
And like this feels like blue Elish Norn. So like, you know, the Phyrexian Praetors were all kind of like very like ideologically diverse, but they're mechanically converging. And I think that's interesting.
I like that.
I like the idea of reanimating this card, like a Grixis deck, or Esper or something. Seems super
Also
busto.
very exciting.
Yeah.
These cards also are the only two in the set that are also going to be available in a Phyrexian language printing. There's an entire article that I'll touch on briefly at the end of the podcast called Collecting Kamigawa Neon Dynasty, where they talk about all the different kinds of things that the cards can look like. And these two specifically can also be in the Phyrexian version with the full Phyrexian alphabet. So that's fun. I'd like to talk about another couple things. I mean, I'll fire this over to you two if you have any cards in particular that you want to talk about from what's been spoiled so far. But I would like to talk about the reality chip, because the type line is legendary artifact creature equipment jellyfish.
See, they could have fit Phyrexian on there if they just shrink all the letters enough.
Yeah, like, I mean, I want to say that Wizards has been pretty aggressive about, like, smallifying the font when they need to fit more stuff in. So I think Tamiyo's not being a Phyrexian is probably pretty deliberate.
I guess being completed doesn't mean you're necessarily Phyrexian.
Yeah.
Maybe we're going to have a Phyrexian tutor that shouldn't get a Planeswalker in the future.
Yeah. So, okay, the reality chip here. It's 1 and a blue for a 0/4 creature. It's a little jellyfish. It says you can look at the top card of your library at any time. And that's what it does as a creature. Then I'm going to skip abilities to go to its last ability, which is Reconfigure, for 2 and a blue. And what that says is, for 2 and a blue, attach to target creature you control, or unattach from a creature. You can only reconfigure as a sorcery. While attached, this isn't a creature.
Finally, I can answer, yes, you can unequip.
Yeah, so you can reconfigure to turn this creature into an equipment, at which point it says, as long as the reality chip is attached to a creature, you may play lands and cast spells from the top of your library. So that first ability is there all the time. Anytime it just says you can look at the top card of your library. That's there if it's a creature or if it's an equipment. But if it's an equipment, you can also play lands and cast spells from the top of your library.
Right. So, like, you know, if it's sitting on your board, right, it kind of has an awareness.
It's a little 0/4 wall. Yeah.
But if it's collaborating with someone, right, like if it's no longer cold on the floor, right?
Then it's Future Sight.
You get Future Sight, right?
Yeah. By the way, if you haven't played Future Sight before, it's pretty bananas. Future Sight and I have an interesting history where I totally overlooked its power the first couple times, and I had like a blue X artifact deck that it fit into really well eventually, I figured out. But it's like some players, myself included, don't understand that playing cards off the top of your library means you can play way more cards because you'll play a card off the top of your library, then a new card's on top of your library. You're going to make your land drops and just like cast all these spells
and
off
then
the
you
top
can
of your
also
library
do
as if
all
they were in your
kinds-
hand.
all kinds of fun things like shuffling your deck
Absolutely.
to get something new, scrying to get something new, milling to get something new. It's like playing off the top of your library is such a wonderful feeling.
It's very powerful. Like if you haven't done it before, it's probably twice as powerful as you're thinking it is.
Yeah.
And if you have, then, you know.
Yeah, it's very much like play a spell, draw a card.
Yeah.
I just can't get over legendary artifact creature equipment jellyfish.
Yeah, no, this thing is priceless and beautiful and terrifying. And very cute.
So who's using it in this art? Did you mention something about? Is this the MacGuffin that Jim Gataxis is looking after?
Must be.
It's legendary. It's called the reality chip.
It's referenced in at least one other card.
Okay.
I can't remember which card right now, though.
Tameshi, I think.
Okay, that makes sense.
Reality Architect.
Yeah. So let's look at that one. This is one of Wheeler's favorite cards from the set.
Oh, yes. We previously misattributed this art to being Moloku because someone told me it was. It wasn't either of you two, but somebody said that this was Moloku, which it's not.
Well,
Sorry.
they're close.
What's Tameshi do?
This card is Moloku, kind of.
Yeah,
right?
it's this Moloku. This era's Moloku.
Yeah, so Tameshi is a 2 and a blue, 2/3 legendary creature moonfolk wizard that has 2 abilities. Whenever one or more non-creature permanents are returned to hand, so anyone's hand, draw a card. This ability triggers only once each turn. And for X and a white, interesting, return a land you control to its owner's hand, so this is the Moloku part, return target artifact or enchantment card with mana value X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Activate only as a sorcery. Now that one, however, you can do as many times as you want, especially if you have a bunch of lands in play and a Black Lotus in your graveyard.
Yeah.
Which is what Wheeler's going to be up to. But it's, it's the legendary, rare, powerful moonfolk creature with a return a land moonfolk ability, right? So in that way, it's Moloku. It's very different from Moloku, but looks pretty fun.
I appreciate that having the activated ability be white means that this has an Azorius color identity for commander shenanigans.
Yeah. And then the commanders, I suspect, will very much get into shenanigans with this card.
Yes.
Yes.
I want to talk briefly about Boseiju, who I mentioned at the top of the show. Boseiju, who endures, still trucking along 10,000 years later. Big old tree. So legendary land, taps for green. Okay, cool. Also has channel. So this is a ability we've seen in the past, but it's back, and it says that you can you can pay a cost and discard the card to do a different thing. So it's sort of like turning it into a different spell, or in this case, into a spell. So for 1 and a green and discard Boseiju, destroy target artifact, enchantment, or non-basic land an opponent controls. That player may search their library for a land card with a basic type, put it with a basic land type.
So duels, triumphs on the table.
Not just a basic, but with a basic type.
You
Put
can
it
go
onto
get
the battlefield, then shuffle this.
Salt-Crested Steppe or whatever.
Yeah.
Shadowmoor lands.
This ability costs 1 colorless less to activate for each legendary creature you control. So, but it can only bottom out at a single green. But this is artifact, enchantment, or non-basic land destruction that is not a spell.
Yeah.
This is an ability. So it can only be countered with, the things that can only counter abilities that people like to bring up as gotchas. Is that quite powerful?
My timeline certainly thinks so. And
yeah,
I would tend to agree. The thing is, like, the relative value of a card or the ability you get from a card or whatever kind of goes up as the cost to include it goes down, and we're right on the bottom here. You've got basically a forest.
Yeah,
if you're going to put forests in your deck, this is a land that comes into play untapped, taps for green. The only thing you're worried about is if you want to jam 4, you may mulligan a bit more often, because if you draw 2 or 3 of them in your opening hand, you might not be able to keep because they're only ever adding 2 mana a turn tops between out of all of them, right?
Right.
But the ability, having uncounterable removal for that's a lot of things. It doesn't say creature or planeswalker, obviously, but artifact, enchantment, non-basic land, like that's a lot of the stuff that your opponent's going to try to mess you up with. So certainly Commander players are going to need these, and I think in older formats where it's more commonly easily available to get lands back from your graveyard and recur this ability, like you could see some kind of stack situation where there's a way to get your land back multiple times a turn, and then you run your opponent out of non-basic lands in their deck, which might be all of their lands in these older formats like that. Anytime you have the potential to remove all of your opponent's mana sources from your library, it's a consideration. People will find out if it's okay, if it's worth playing. And just in general, like just having disenchants strapped to your forests is very exciting.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
good to know. Seemed like kind of a big deal.
I think it's a big deal, yeah.
Anything jumping out to either you that you want to bring up? I got one other that I want to talk about, but it's more just for silly reasons, so I can save it for a little bit.
I'm really excited for the modern age, mainly just because it's a common saga. There are a couple of these, and I'm really happy to see sagas at common.
Every one of these sagas is super cool, by the way.
Yes. These are my favorite card types, I think. It's been a while coming, but like the sagas just delight me all the time because it's all deep cultural stuff from the plane.
Mm-hmm.
I'm stoked that the sagas made it into like being vanilla, basically.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what's the modern age do?
All right, the modern age is a blue enchantment saga. For 1 and a blue, you get 3 verses chapters. I forget what they're called.
Whatever.
Actually,
Lore counters, chapters maybe.
1 and 2 read the same, and they are draw a card, then discard a card.
Nice.
Chapter 3 reads, exile this saga, then return it to the battlefield transformed under your control. So it has a backside. The backside is Vector Glider, which is a blue 2/3 enchantment creature spirit with flying.
I love it.
Yeah, it's
That
just a
seems
little guy.
This seems really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
2 mana to loot for 2 turns, and then you get a 2/3 flyer?
Yeah. This is like the worst possible Delver.
I wonder if it's good enough for Pauper Reanimator. Probably not. I think their discard outlets usually cost 1, but it's a cool card.
Yeah.
I like this a lot.
This is such bad Delver, and yeah, I'm here for it. Right? Maybe this is a more
Glider.
like limited Delver. Reliable limited Delver, maybe.
Yeah.
Similar space, right?
The Vector Glider reminds me of Vib Ribbon.
It's
I don't
just
know
so
what that
cute.
is.
It's a PlayStation game, PlayStation 1 game.
Well,
So
like
it was one of the first games with vector graphics.
The artwork is very like 1990s. It is the year 2004.
Yeah.
The internet has taken over the multiverse.
So good.
Right? It's Tron. And I adore it.
I want to talk actually real quick about another one of the sagas, The Life of Toshiro Umezawa, because it's 1 and a black, and it's the same sort of setup. They're not all like this, but the same one of the first 2 chapters here are the same. And so it's choose 1. Target creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn. Target creature gets -1/-1 until end of turn, and you gain 2 life. So those are the things that Umezawa's Jite can do. So you get 2 of those. And then, Chapter 3, exile the saga, return it to the battlefield transformed, and it transforms as Memory of Toshiro, which is an enchantment creature human samurai, which is a 2/3 with tap, pay 1 life, add black. Spend this mana only to cast an instant or sorcery spell. What I love about this in particular is, if you recall, the reason that Umezawa's Jite is so busted is that originally one of the abilities was to generate black mana. And then they were like, that's kind of weird. That's maybe too powerful or out of flavor for black. Let's replace it with, I want to say it was the -1/-1 ability and not play test it. And
you mean the one everybody used?
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, like, the reason it's so broken is because originally Umezawa's Jite generated black mana, and so this is such a meta reference, and I love it.
That's awesome. It's wild that like there were 2 years in a row where there was like a second set about to be printed, and at the last minute they changed an important line on an equipment that led to like the downfall of Standard, and it happened like 2 years in a row. It was the following year. It was Darksteel one year, and then it was Betrayers the next year. And I mean, I say downfall. Lots of people still played Standard, but I didn't.
Yeah.
I waited for that card to rotate out before I bought it.
Nelson, what's something that's leapt out at you?
Right. Well, we've talked about some important characters already, and one of my favorite characters, Tezzeret, is back as Tezzeret, Betrayer of Flesh.
Oh, yeah.
We've got, Tezzeret's on Kamigawa, which seems like a good fit. Seems like there'd be a lot of interesting things for Tezzeret to,
Man, F this guy.
learn about and betray. So 2 generic blue for a foil loyalty planeswalker with a static. The first activated ability of an artifact you activate each turn costs 2 less to activate.
Ooh.
So I love a mana rock. Only shrinks activated abilities, but that's okay. We've got some expensive activated abilities on cards I like. And for +1, you draw 2 cards, but then you discard 2 cards unless you discard an artifact. So that's good. Basically, so far, everything about this card loves Trading Post, excuse me.
All right.
One thing I've just noticed, neither Tamio nor Jin-Gitaxias have the Phyrexian watermark.
Oh, neat.
Right, that Vorinclex had.
Yeah. Right, from Kaldheim? Yeah.
Yeah, although, hold on. That isn't true. The Phyrexian language printing of Jin-Gitaxias has the Phyrexian watermark.
Oh, okay.
So
interesting.
Maybe these just don't mean anything. Maybe they're just cosmetic.
Fair.
Like,
there's a lot of cosmetic stuff going on. Yeah.
Tezzeret can also animate one of your artifacts, makes it 4/4, and gives you an emblem with whenever an artifact you control becomes tapped, draw a card. So pretty normal Tezzeret things. I'm kind of excited by the mana reduction ability, but usually what happens with Tezzeret and I is I get super excited for him, and then he turns out to be okay. So that's what I'm expecting at this point.
Reasonable.
Other story beats. I suppose we now know who the Wanderer is. Kind of.
Yeah.
Like we know what her job is, I guess.
Yeah, it's still because the Wandering Emperor is still just legendary planeswalker. No further type line. Right, which is how the Wanderer was originally. So like we still don't know like her name.
Yeah.
But yeah, we now see her face and know that she's the Emperor of Kamigawa at this moment in time, apparently.
Maybe it's one of those jobs that just completely subsumes the person.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, this card seems very powerful in mono white. It's 2 white for, as I say, legendary planeswalker, no further information, with flash. As long as the Wandering Emperor entered the battlefield this turn, you may activate her loyalty abilities anytime you could cast an instant, which also means like on your turn. So like during your combat, you could do that. That's kind of fun. +1, put a +1/+1 counter on up to 1 target creature. It gains first strike until end of turn. -1, create a 2/2 white samurai creature token with vigilance. And -2, exile target tapped creature. You gain 2 life. So you can like flash her in during their attackers and then exile one of their attackers and you gain life, or you can make a surprise blocker or give one of your things first strike. Like this card actually seems very good.
Yeah, this feels like it's playing around in the same space that an Elspeth would.
Yeah, like where it's busted and limited.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like this is the best Sentinels of Glenelendra we've ever seen. Which is great because it's on like the ninjutsu plane, so that kind of fits and makes sense.
Okay. Talking about cards I'm excited for limited, this is the other card I wanted to talk about. Greater Tanuki. Someone was saying it's like that Tanuki is they're one of those creatures where every day someone's surprised to find out that they're actually a real thing, like Narwhal or Axolotl, right? Like, yes, Tanukis are a real thing. So this is
like in our world?
Yeah.
Like a real life is Tanuki?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm that person today.
There we go. Aren't they great? It's AKA the Japanese raccoon dog, which is why it's enchantment creature dog, which is like, to me, that's kind of a shame because they're more closely related to foxes, but you wouldn't call this a fox. I just want to see Tanuki as a subtype line. But yeah, no, Tanuki are
gosh.
adorable.
The world is better than it was 2 minutes ago.
Yeah.
I definitely thought this was just like a spirit. I thought it was a myth.
Well, so they are mythologized as like trickster creatures. The representation of the Tanuki as like the wanderer with like their giant jug of wine and the big hat and their enormous testicles, which of course we have the art position such that we can't see that on this particular Tanuki. So to the benefit of all.
Are you sure? Do we know what he's standing on?
That's a great question. Good point. So I think Tanuki are adorable, and as you say, like the folklore aspects are super interesting. He's really cute. Also, 4 green for a 6/5 with trample. Okay, and channel 2 and a green, discard Greater Tanuki, search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle. So operating in the same space as a Croson Tusker. This is the big green limited common that I'm very excited to put into my green draft decks.
Yeah, like maybe 15 years ago, this would have had basic land cycling.
Yeah. So I'm very excited for playing this card in limited, and also just that Tanuki are great. So I can see why they said dog, because they are canids. Even though they often get called like raccoons because they have like the tail that's kind of like a raccoon and the face that's sort of similar, but they're more closely related to just like foxes or whatever.
Speaking of green cards that have the word basic land on them, I'm pretty excited by the last chapter of Who is the Kodama, saga that's been unfolding over several sets, starting of course with the original Kamigawa, and then getting a little bump in Kodama. Yeah, getting a bump in Commander Legends. The most recent, I believe, is Kodama of the West Tree. Sorry, East Tree we saw already. So Kodama of the West Tree. 2 generic and a green for a 3/3 legendary spirit with reach, as well as modified creatures you control have trample. And whenever a modified creature you control deals combat damage to an opponent, search your library for a basic land card, put it on battlefield, tap, then shuffle.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
What's a modified creature?
A modified creature is a creature that has either an equipment or aura attached to it, or a counter of any kind. So usually that'll be a +1/+1 counter, but I suppose an Ikoria first strike counter also counts as a modification. So that's a new ability that it's new and it's also not, but there's a shorthand for it, right?
I feel like this operates in the same realm as historic, where it's like, for this set, we're just calling these things historic, right? Like artifacts, sagas, legendary creatures, we're going to call those historic. And so this is like modified is equipment's important asterisk, that it's auras you control.
Right.
So if someone puts a pacifism on one of your creatures, it's not modified mechanically. And counters. Yeah, in case there's something with like, I don't know, flying counters or something like that.
Right. And I guess -1/-1 counters that your opponents put on. Oh, maybe that one's different.
No,
okay.
It just says counters.
So any kind of counters. So your opponent can mess your creatures up with stab wound counters or whatever.
Interesting.
And that still counts. But if they pacify it, or they put dehydration on it or something, then that doesn't count. Okay.
This card seems pretty sweet.
Thank you for noticing that, Grab. And also, yeah, this card seems pretty busted. Going to be good in limited and probably also constructed and definitely commander, I would think.
Yeah.
Modern? Probably not, but maybe. There has been there's been one flavor of affinity that was revolving around the Khan's 1 green mana enchantment. I can't remember the name of it, but it adds extra counters every time you're putting counters on something. Hardened Scales. So, there's a chance Hardened Scales once a 3/3 reach. Not a good chance, though. Anyways, I do expect this card to win some limited games, and hopefully there'll be either standard or alchemy decks brewed around it. Like it definitely seems like sort of a linchpin. Play 4 of me, and then when you hit it, you get to kind of go off.
Mm-hmm. Hey, we found out what the very good dog does.
Right.
Spirited Companion. 1 and a white for a 1/1 enchantment creature dog. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card. Hooray. Good enough for Enchantress? I don't know.
I'm just excited that white has Llanowar or Visionary now.
Oh, yeah,
Sorry.
right.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm. Oh,
Hmm.
I just want to know where to get this alternate art Tamio.
Well, that actually, I'll tell you what, I can move on to the rather dense article
Mhm.
entitled Collecting Kamigawa Neon Dynasty. So here's all the different ways that cards can be. Okay. So first, the ukiyo-e lands,
Mhm.
which are these absolutely gorgeous basics.
Mhm.
We've talked about these before, but these are very, very pretty. Let me make sure that Paul has access to this article as well, because I realized I should have sent him that link beforehand. These, luckily, are going to be pretty straightforward to get. These are going to be available in packs of any language. You can find the full art cards in set boosters, draft boosters, and collector boosters. 1/3 of all set and draft boosters have a non-foil of these, and in set boosters, the land slot contains a traditional foil in 20% of these packs and whatever. So these will be common enough that those who want them will be able to get them, which I'm very, very happy about because these are tremendously pretty.
Yes.
So then we have the soft glow treatment. Every rare and mythic in Kamigawa Neon Dynasty has an alternate version. You can find most of these cards in the soft glow treatment inspired by a futuristic neon aesthetic. Here's a card we didn't talk about, Surge Hacker Mech. Yes, vehicles are back. It's very anime. There are mecha. This vehicle, by the way, 4 mana for a 5/5 vehicle with Minache. When Surge Hacker Mech enters the battlefield, it deals damage equal to twice the number of vehicles you control to target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls. Crew 4. I saw someone on the subreddit. What was this? It was Flame Tonka Volkswagen. So someone write that down. We'll get back to it when we do the nicknames. So there are 37 rares and mythics with this soft glow treatment. The 6 rare and 3 mythic rare sagas in Kamigawa also feature an alternate version with the soft glow treatment, but with a twist. On the alternate sagas, both sides feature alternate art, but only the back side is the soft glow frame, because they didn't want to further mess up the saga frame. So like this is the backside of the Kami War. So the front side is 1 white, blue, black, red, green. Chapter 1, exile target non-land permanent and opponent controls. Chapter 2, return up to 1 other target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. Then each opponent discards a card. And then chapter 3, you exile and return it. So this is alternate art. And then the back, the Okagachi Made Manifest, the enchantment creature Dragon Spirit, which is a 6/6 that is all colors and has flying and trample, and whenever it attacks, defending player chooses a non-land card in your graveyard, return that card to your hand, and Okagachi gets +X/+O until end of turn, where X is the mana value of that card, is alternate art with the fancy glowy frame. Cool. Those are available in all boosters. There are 22 ninjas. They get the ninja treatment. This we've actually seen because we looked at Satoru Umezawa, and so the ninja frame is just sort of a cool looking variant on the standard Magic frame. So that's neat. There are 7 common, 8 uncommon, 6 rares, and 2 mythics with the ninja treatment. Then there's the samurai treatment. There are also 21 samurai creatures, plus the Wandering Emperor. Each samurai has an alternate version with new art in the samurai frame. Going very anime with the alternate art for these.
Mm-hmm.
There are 10 commons, 7 uncommons, 4 rares, and 1 mythic with the samurai treatment. Those are also in all boosters. There are borderless cards. So there's the Planeswalkers, all 4, which we've seen now, by the way. Tamio, Tezzeret, Kaito, and the Wandering Emperor. There are also 5 mythic rare dragons. that are in the borderless version. We haven't actually talked about this one. This is Kyrie the Swirling Sky, 4 blue for a 6/6 legendary creature, dragon spirit with flying and ward 3. And when Kyrie dies, choose one. Return any number of target non-land permanents with a total mana value 6 or less to their owner's hands. Pretty cool. Or mill 6 cards and return up to 2 instant and or sorcery cards from your graveyard to your hand. Also seems powerful. And 5 rare legendary lands. Those can be also opened in any booster. The Yoji Shinkawa art for Satoru Umezawa, which we already talked about and I fawned over relentlessly, is the buy a box card. And then there are the 2 Phyrexian printings of Jin-Gitaxias and Tamiyo. Also, there's normal foils in the same way that normal foils appear, but also 12 curated cards receive a foil etched treatment. And there's 1 rare and 4 mythic rare foil etched cards in the soft glow frame, 1 rare and 2 mythic rare foil etched cards in the ninja frame, and 1 rare and 1 mythic foil etched in the samurai frame, and 2 foil etched mythics in the Phyrexian frame. Those are only in collector boosters. Also, sorry, I have to just read this. In Kamigawa Neon Dynasty, every rare and mythic rare has an alternate treatment, so we considered making no extended art cards, the sort of widescreen ones, but some people love them. So instead, we made extended art versions of every rare and mythic in the set.
Fair.
So,
Okay.
fair enough. So those are collector booster exclusives, as I think they have been for a while. And then finally, there is the one that we talked about a while back, which was the neon ink, which is only the Hidetsugu one, which has the preposterously it's like this one is, there's a quarter as many of these as this one, and
right, yeah, the
an
ratios.
eighth of many of these and so it's, oh, here it is. There are half as many green as blue, a quarter as many red as green.
And I like less than half of you, half as well as you do.
Yeah, exactly.
I
Yeah.
can't help myself. I know I already made that same joke on this podcast.
Luckily,
Yeah.
the main takeaway is that most of everything that I said, nearly all of all the stuff that I just talked about, are available in draft and set boosters. Most of them. Like the extended arts are only in collector boosters, and the foil etched and neon ink ones are only in collector boosters. But everything else you can get in any of the boosters. And to my mind, the most important one, the basic lands, are quite common. So,
Hey, Graham, if I want to order me some of these boosters, where do you think I should go?
oh, what a tremendous question, Nelson. I'm glad you asked. cardkingdom.com/LRR would be the place to buy your sealed product, because they'll ship it anywhere in the US. They'll ship you singles anywhere in the world if you just want to cut out the middleman and buy the singles that you want. Do that, and that lets them know that we sent you, and we appreciate it. But also, you can just support us directly at patreon.com/loadingreadyrun, because that supports not only this show, but also everything we do. I think we got in all the information there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. Well, now that the floodgates have opened, we have much to discuss in the coming weeks. So please stay tuned to the channel. A reminder, of course, that the PPR, the pre-release for Kamigawa Neon Dynasty, is coming up very soon. February 5th, starting at 11 a.m. Pacific. Tune in. It's going to be a blast. I'm already so excited about this set. So that'll be a fun time. Until then, until next time we talk on Tap Tap Concede, I have been Graham, joined by Cameron.
Hello.
And Nelson.
Also here.
Paul's been running tech on this. Heather gets these online. Thank you all so much for listening. We'll talk to you next time.
Bye.
Bye.